He was born without a name, without a birthday, without a single right to call his own. But through words alone, through the sheer power of his voice, Frederick Douglass broke the chains that once bound him and spoke freedom into existence. Frederick Douglass was born into slavery in Maryland around 1818. He never knew the exact date because enslaved people were denied that basic dignity. They were not meant to remember who they were. As a child, he was separated from his mother. He saw family members beaten. He lived in a world designed to crush him, a system built on silence and obedience. But Douglass refused to be silent. When he was around 12, Douglass was sent to Baltimore. There, his enslaver's wife began teaching him the alphabet, an act of kindness that would soon be forbidden. Her husband warned her, "If you teach that boy to read, there will be no keeping him. It will forever unfit him to be a slave." Those words lit a fire inside young Frederick. He realized that knowledge was power. If reading could make him unfit to be a slave, then he would learn to read no matter the cost. He taught himself in secret, trading bread with poor white boys in exchange for reading lessons. He devoured every word he could find: the Bible, political essays, speeches. Through language, he began to see himself not as property, but as a man. At age 20, after multiple failed attempts, Douglass finally escaped slavery. He disguised himself as a sailor, carrying borrowed papers, and boarded a northbound train. Every tick of the clock could have meant capture or death. But on September 3, 1838, he arrived in New York City. He later wrote, "I have often been asked how I felt when I found myself in a free state. It was a moment of the highest excitement. I felt like one who had escaped a den of hungry lions." He was free, but freedom was not enough. He could have disappeared, built a quiet life. Instead, he chose to fight for those still in chains. In 1841, Douglass stood up at an anti-slavery meeting in Massachusetts. He was nervous, a self-taught man, speaking before educated abolitionists. But the moment he began to speak, the room changed. His voice, deep, commanding, filled with pain and conviction, silenced the audience. He spoke not from books, but from scars. And when he finished, the crowd erupted. From that day on, Frederick Douglass became one of the most powerful voices of the abolition movement. He traveled across America and Britain, speaking to thousands. People couldn't believe someone born into slavery could speak with such intelligence and eloquence. But Douglass didn't just speak, he challenged. He asked America, "How can you call yourself the land of liberty while millions are enslaved?" In 1847, Douglass founded his own newspaper, the North Star. Its motto, "Right is of no sex, truth is of no color. God is the father of us all, and we are all brethren." Through its pages, he didn't just fight slavery. He fought for women's rights, education, and equality for all people. He believed that justice was not a privilege, it was a birthright. He met with presidents, advised Abraham Lincoln, and pushed for the enlistment of black soldiers during the Civil War. He stood not as a victim, but as a reformer, unafraid to criticize even his allies if they failed to live up to the promise of liberty. Even after slavery was abolished, Douglass warned that freedom was not guaranteed. He saw that racism still ran deep, in laws, in hearts, in the silence of those who looked away. He said, "The thing worse than rebellion is the thing that causes rebellion." His speeches weren't just about the past, they were about the soul of America. He believed the nation could be great, but only if it faced its own hypocrisy. Douglass reminded Americans that progress is never easy. It demands courage, truth, and constant struggle. When Frederick Douglass died in 1895, he left behind no monuments, no fortune, only words. Words that shook the conscience of a nation. Words that still echo today in classrooms, protests, and halls of power. He had transformed from a slave into a statesman, from a man denied his humanity into a man who redefined what humanity meant. He once said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Frederick Douglass taught the world that freedom is not just a dream, it is a fight. And it begins, as it always did with him, with the courage to speak.